Yeah, so 2011 is over. 2012 is now just over a month old, and so how's your new year doing, nuclear industry?
In the best of the rest of the news, earlier this week, California's San Onofre nuclear power plant had to be unexpectedly shut down after radioactive water was discovered leaking out of the plant's Unit 3 reactor. Officials claim the leak is fully contained within the concrete dome of the plant. This comes at the same time that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is warning that aging nuclear plants in the eastern and central portion of the United States might not be able to withstand an earthquake or its after effects. We're all aware of how an earthquake and subsequent tsunami ravaged the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan, causing radiation leakage and poisonings. The NRC is giving operators at vulnerable nuclear plants 4 years here in the United States to conduct seismic tests to determine if their plants can withstand an earthquake. However, nuclear energy critics argue that the NRC is moving too slowly to address the threat to the nation's nuclear plants, and that as a result there is the possibility of a Fukushima-level disaster happening in the United States. Joining me now to discuss the nation's aging nuclear infrastructure and the NRC's new warning and what's going on in California is Kevin Kamps, radioactive waste watchdog with BeyondNuclear.org. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. With regard to the San Onofre?
San Onofre.
San Onofre plant. Why should we worry about them venting radioactive steam?
Well, any exposure to radioactivity carries a health risk. The higher the dose, the greater the risk, but these risks accumulate over a lifetime. So when the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or Southern California Edison says, oh, it was very low levels, barely detectable, well, the thing is, people live downwind, they live downstream, and we're being exposed to tritium from San Onofre yesterday, from Byron, Illinois, a couple days ago, from Prairie Island, Minnesota. A few days ago, they announced, they let be known that last November they had overflowing tritium, and the Prairie Island Indian community lives hundreds of yards away from this facility.
That's incredible. So we've got a tritium atom here behind. What is tritium? Why should we care?
Tritium is radioactive hydrogen. It goes anywhere that hydrogen goes, which is everywhere.
In your body?
In your body, in the environment. It can go down to the DNA level inside your body, and it packs a pretty powerful punch at the DNA level or in your cells or your organs.
That would be the electrons and particles and whatnot.
It's a beta emitter, but if you were to listen to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or the nuclear industry, they treat tritium like it's not even radioactive, or they say, well, you know, it's mildly radioactive and it dilutes into the environment.
Wait a minute, beta emitter, it's throwing off a proton?
It's a beta emitter, and at those intimate levels it does significant health damage. It's a clinically proven cause of cancer, birth defects, and genetic damage.
Right, I mean that would knock, if it hit DNA it could knock one of the amino acids right out of the chain and put a hole in it.
And the reason that, you know, these are leaks, these are steam generator leaks of radioactive tritium, steam into the environment as they try to get these things back under control. But they allow these tritium releases on a regular basis by permit because they can't filter it out. It's such a small atom, hydrogen, it can pass through certain grades of steel,
it's
actually.
the second smallest thing there is. I mean,
yeah.
Helium and hydrogen, right?
And so, yeah, they're having these leaks, but they let this be discharged into the rivers, into the oceans, into the air on a regular basis, and it's doing its health damage downwind and downstream.
That's incredible. And so there's no way to filter it, there's no way to stop it, there's no way to block it, and so they just say, don't worry, be happy. Do they even bother to detect it?
Well, that was one of the misleading statements made by the NRC in Illinois at Byron with this radioactive tritium steam being emitted. That was because of a fire. And in that case they said, hey, we know that the tritium levels aren't high because the radiation monitors aren't picking it up. Well, a group that we work with called Nuclear Energy Information Service did an immediate FOIA to the state, and the state of Illinois said, we don't have monitors on site that can detect tritium. We have to send that out to a lab. So we don't know what the levels are yet. So the deception is just all too commonplace.
So they don't even monitor for this stuff because there's no way to filter it out. So they're all. So
well, they do some monitoring, they do sampling, but it takes time to get the results back. So when they said it's all safe, you can't say that a radioactivity release is safe. That's a misnomer. There's no safe level of exposure to radioactivity.
Right.
They've done a cost benefit and they've decided it's acceptably risky in their opinion.
Shirt off X-ray porno scanners. They know that 100 Americans are probably going to get cancer from them. Well, that's worth not having a terrorist incident. New lid steam generators, what's the deal with this? This is a San Onofre?
Well, The amazing thing about this steam generator tube rupture at San Onofre is that this is a new steam generator. These are just over a year old, and they have defects, and they're failing. These were supposed to last like 25 years. It's just over a year old. So we're seeing the same thing at 3 Mile Island. We're seeing the same thing at Arkansas Nuclear 1. Brand new steam generators. These are major organ transplants. The old ones were too degraded to keep using.
Right.
So they put new ones in, and these are failing. So these decades-old reactors...
Where are these things made?
Well, the one at San Onofre, I don't know for sure, but the one at 3 Mile Island and Arkansas Nuclear 1, that's a French product. That's Areva of France that supplied those steam generators.
And they're not working here?
These, you mentioned lids. Brand new lids from a company called Babcock & Wilcox Canada have been installed on 6 reactors, but we know from the Palisades reactor in Michigan that their brand new lid from the same factory is defective. So they didn't put it on. They have an old corroded lid that they're sticking by, which is frightening because they're too worried about this new lid being so defective. But 6 reactors, including Beaver Valley in Pennsylvania, put lids from this factory on their reactors, and we don't know if those were defective or not. They could be.
And we won't know until what?
Well, we're seeing tube ruptures at San Onofre. If you have a domino effect, a cascade of tube ruptures, and there's thousands of these tubes in these steam generators,
right,
you could have a loss of coolant accident in the core, which could lead to a meltdown, which could lead to China syndrome, burn through containment, and a catastrophic radioactivity release.
So it could become Fukushima, worse than Fukushima, or
well, you could have a
actually we don't know yet how bad Fukushima is going to get. I mean,
if you have a bad enough steam generator failure, and we had a close call at Indian Point near New York City. It was February of 2000. They blew a steam tube. NRC had let them operate to the brink of failure, and then it failed. And if they had had a cascade, I mean, this is 25, 30 miles from New York City. They had another radioactive steam release at that time into the Hudson River Valley. So these nukes are getting old and dangerous. We're in the breakdown phase of
the nuclear
power in this country.
Yeah, and wow. And now the NRC is saying, okay, y'all have 4 years to check out these plants and make sure that they're okay with an earthquake. We had an earthquake here in Washington, D.C. a few months ago.
Yeah, August 23rd, the North Anna plant had damage on the site. They only inspected one of the reactors and let both of them restart, assuming that the other one was the same as the other one. They had damage to their radioactive waste storage.
Wait a minute, to climb all over the Washington Monument and find every single crack. They're not checking the nuclear plants?
It was a very quick turnaround restart, and we're seeing that at Davis-Besse in Ohio. They have a cracked concrete shield building, and they let them restart anyway, even though they don't know the root cause, they don't know the extent of the cracking, and they don't know how to fix the problem.
Wow.
So the NRC is really outdoing itself. I mean, this
is a captive, this is regulatory capture. This is
very much
a regulatory
so.
Agency that's
taking huge risks on these hasty restarts.
Amazing. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. Nuclear power is the most dangerous and most expensive form of electric power generation in the world, and would not exist in the United States without massive taxpayer subsidies and guarantees in the Price-Anderson Act and other legislation. It's time for all of us to say, no nukes.
But I want to talk about domestically, as I often do, because whether we want to talk about an incident in Wolf Creek that caused that reactor to shut down because of a loss of power, or Byron, Illinois, which also had to scram one of its reactors because external power was lost because of a fire that they actually couldn't find. So that one's still under investigation. That just happened at the beginning of this last week. Lots of the typical unusual events that we saw countless weeks last year, almost every week, somewhere, somehow. You need electric power to safely generate electric power if you want to go nuclear. But the one I really want to talk about this week, the one that really just, gets you all hopped up, is San Onofre. San Onofre in California had to shut down its Unit 3. There are Unit 2 and Unit 3. Unit 1 has been offline for a very long time. It's been decommissioned, in fact. But there are 2 reactors at San Onofre, Unit 2 and Unit 3, and they had to scram Unit 3 because sensors were set off to a radioactive leak. As it turns out, they discovered there was indeed a leak of radioactive water in a building that wasn't the containment building, but an auxiliary building, a building that had doors and people going in and out of them. and that caused them to shut that down. It's a leak in a tube in the loop that powers the turbines. It's not the loop that goes through the reactors, but as I explain at great length in the story today, that doesn't mean it's not radioactive, because tritium, radioactive hydrogen, very tiny molecules, teeny tiny molecules, and they can go from one loop to the other loop. Turbine steam is still itself, to some degree, radioactive, and some of that water leaked. When they vent steam, often it's that steam, that tritium-laced steam, that they vent, and that happened in, for instance, Byron, Illinois this last month as well. But anyway, back to San Onofre. So there was that leak, and that caused them to shut down Unit 3, but Unit 2 is actually the scarier one, because Unit 2 has already been shut down for what was considered to be a routine refueling and maintenance pit stop, like a 2-month pit stop. But during the inspections of this, they discovered that a vast number of the 3/4-inch tubes that run between the heating elements and the turbine, these tubes, had degraded substantially. 2 of them to the extent where they will have to be completely taken out of service. 60-something of them degraded by at least 20%. Another 800, I think, have degraded by like 10%. Now, these tubes, I know that these facilities were opened in the early 80s, but these tubes are almost brand new. In 2009 and 2010, all of these tubes were replaced. They did a complete makeover, San Onofre home makeover special edition. I'm screwing that one up. And so these are like new tubes. And as many a nuclear regulatory commissioner will tell you, or the researchers they hire, kind of alarming. You expect this kind of degradation after decades, not after a year and a half, 2 years. So this says either these tubes were improperly manufactured, improperly installed, or improperly maintained. Maybe all three. Not beyond the realm of possibility. But shows you how many different places you can screw up and risk great harm at a nuclear facility right then and there. But more importantly, maybe, I mean, they caught it, right? Now we have to decide what to do about it. This facelift cost $670 million. To put that in context, that's $135 million more than the entire federal loan guarantee for Solyndra, the failed solar company. I talk about that in the story as well. But more importantly, this takes San Onofre, both of its units, offline for God knows how long while they inspect all of these tubes, and probably have to replace a good number of them, I mean, if they're going to be responsible about it. And this gets to, again, that point that nuclear power is not an efficient way to generate electricity. A darn stupid way to boil water, as Bucky Fuller said. A lot of people, a lot of nuclear advocates will chime in and say, oh yes, nuclear is very expensive when you're building it. To build the plant's phenomenally expensive. Some will even admit without federal help, you couldn't build any more nuclear facilities, which is 100% true. You can't build one without federal loan guarantees. But that once these plants are up and running, they basically run 24/7, 365, generating power, and that's, sort of indispensable, somehow economical. But the fact is that they don't run 24/7, 365. San Onofre not generating 1 ounce of power, not 1 kilowatt of power right now, all right? Neither is Wolf Creek in Kansas, one of the 2 Byron reactors, also not churning out anything. Look at 2011, and whether it's North Anna or Calvert Cliffs or Palisades, which was shut down 5 different times last year, or a plant in St. Lucie, Florida, which had to be shut down because it was swarmed by jellyfish. It also killed a lot of endangered groupers, but that's a whole other story. Or perhaps the Crystal River plant, which is one of America's prize nuclear facilities. It hasn't generated 1 kilowatt in almost 2.5 years, and probably won't, even under best case scenario, until 2014. assuming they can find $2.5 billion to fix the thing, because it's that broken.